Hi, everyone. Thanks for joining. Welcome to our webinar series that is titled Topics at the Nexus of Climate Change, Fisheries, and Blue Foods. So this webinar series is jointly hosted by 6 different organizations working to advance these topics. And these are all UN Ocean Decade actions. So we have Supreme, FishMIP, Blue Food Futures, SmartNet, FishSCORE, and Becky. And we will put a link in the chat for more information about all of these programs. So this webinar series highlights current efforts and challenges at the climate fisheries nexus. The presentations and discussions cover a range of topics, from data-driven efforts to better understand oceanographic and biological changes affecting fisheries, to how the results can be used to inform fisheries management, aquaculture, and sustainable food decisions. And then to the many ways that people and broader communities are being impacted by and adapting to changes in marine ecosystems and marine resource use. So today it is my pleasure to introduce Roger Griffiths as our presenter. He is with NOAA's National Marine Fisheries Service in the Office of Science and Technology. NOAA is part of the US. So a marine ecologist by training, Roger works with partners to increase the production and use of climate information to fulfill the agency's mandates for sustainable fisheries management, protected species recovery, and habitat conservation. Excuse me. So today, Roger is going to present on a cross-NOAA effort to provide decision makers with the information they need to prepare for and respond to rapidly changing oceans. And this initiative is called the Climate Ecosystems and Fisheries Initiative, or CEFI. So I'm going to turn it over to Roger. Thank you.
Thank you, Grace, and thank you, Claire, and all the sponsors of this webinar series. It's a pleasure to be here today to present on the Climate Ecosystems and Fisheries Initiative. And I just want to also, before I begin, say thank you to all of you for what you're doing on these critical issues related to sustainable fisheries with changing oceans. So thank you. We can go to the first slide, Grace, if you don't mind.
Yep, 1 second. Let me pull it up. Sorry.
Yeah, no worries.
Okay, there we
go. Fantastic. Thank you so much. So you're seeing that as a full screen? Yes.
Yes, it looks good.
Yes. Okay, great. Well, thank you again for the opportunity to be here. It's just such a pleasure to talk about this project that NOAA has been working on with many partners called the Climate Ecosystems and Fisheries Initiative, or as we affectionately refer to it as CEFI. But the full name is really CEFI Decision Support System. So what I'm going to do today is talk a little bit about the rationale for why we are developing this system, what the system includes, and some of the products and services that we're launching, and then give you a status report on where we are. So next slide, please. I don't think I need to remind you all that we're facing major changes in ocean conditions. Our oceans are changing dramatically over multiple time frames. You can click again, Grace. Both near-term events, extreme events, and longer-term changes. Next slide, please. And the impacts are real, cascading impacts from changing habitats to shifting distributions of species, changes in abundance, and changing ocean uses as well. Next slide, please. And there's lots at risk. Vital marine resources, from fisheries to protected species habitats and biodiversity, and of course the people, businesses, and economies that depend on them. Fisheries alone supporting in the US, supporting, I just realized these numbers are old, fisheries in the US supporting about $450 billion in economic activity each year and 2.3 million jobs. Aquaculture also at risk, and many of the other sectors, ocean-related sectors as well, and ultimately thousands of businesses and thousands of coastal communities, many of which have strong cultural heritage links to both the resources and the ocean ecosystems. Next slide, please. So with these changes, there is a great need for, urgent need for information and advice. And it really boils down to three questions in our mind if we're thinking about this. What's changing? What are the current changes and impacts? What's coming? Those expected future impacts and risk, and how to respond. That is, what might be the best fishery management strategies for changed oceans over the near term, midterm, and longer term. And the same questions, you can click through, same questions basically apply to all of our ocean-related uses, at least that NOAA's involved with, from protected species and protected areas. What's changing, what's coming, what's at risk, and how to respond. Aquaculture, what are some of the best strategies for both siting and operations of aquaculture? And ultimately, the people involved in all these things, what are the risks? What should they prepare for? And how might communities and sectors adapt? Next slide, please. And this slide is a reminder, as we all know, that the kind of information advice that's needed is across time scales and across spatial scales as well, from information that can help decision makers prepare and respond to, rapidly respond to extreme events, to, I'd say, kind of seasonal to interannual, where many of the fisheries decisions are made, and then all the way out to longer term planning so that we're prepared for the changes that are coming. The decisions we make today often will affect where we are down the road. So longer term planning is really important as well. Next slide, please. So what's the problem? Well, the problem is, at least in our assessment within the National Marine Fisheries Service, the problem was that we had no operational system to support this kind of climate-informed decision-making. Currently, we have no regular delivery of ocean forecasts or projections. It makes it very difficult if you don't, you're kind of driving with your headlights off if you don't have that future outlook. We also had no operational production of ecosystem scenarios, risk assessments in that management advice. That left us with little ability to use climate-informed advice in decision-making to reduce risks and increase resilience, and little planning, actually, for extreme events and longer-term changes. So CEFI was designed to address each of these four critical needs. CEFI designed to provide regular delivery of these robust ocean forecasts and projections, build the operational capability to deliver these kinds of key decision support products like ecosystem scenarios, risk assessments, and best options. Improve our ability to then use that to reduce risks and increase resilience, and improve our ability to prepare for both extreme events and the longer term changes. Next slide, please. So what is CEFI? CEFI is a cross-NOAA effort to build a nationwide decision support system that provides climate-informed advice for marine resource management and community adaptation. And it addresses those four critical requirements for climate-informed decision-making or ocean-informed decision-making: that reliable delivery of robust ocean outlooks, the operational production of climate-informed advice, increased capacity for using that in the decision-making process, and research and observations to continuously validate and innovate the system as we go through time and the changing environments. Next slide, please. So this is a cartoon showing the CEFI decision support system, the major components of the decision support system. And what I'll do is I'll unpack each of these as we go forward. But a quick overview, from right to left. We start on the right side because it's the decision makers are the primary customers for CEFI. So we work closely with decision makers to better understand what information and advice they need for their decision making, whether it be fisheries or protected species. And then working back through the products they need through these decision support teams, and ultimately the regional ocean modeling outputs. From a scientific perspective, we often work the other way, right? A regional ocean modeling producing those forecasts and projections. All of that is served through a data portal that'll provide public access to those ocean forecasts and projections, and then decision support teams that turn it into the kind of information and advice that decision makers need. And you can see if everything works well, we have targeted research and observations iterating through to support each of these, the development and improvement of each of these sections. Next slide, please. So this is another way of looking at the system, and it begins to provide a little bit more of the work or the flow, product flow. You could see on the left side those regional ocean modeling outlooks, everything from early warnings of extreme events to mid or longer term projections of ocean conditions. Those are then being fed into or accessed by these decision support teams, who are then turning those into an operational set of products. Things like projections of future distributions of habitats and species, information on potential future forecasts and projections of species abundance, information about ecosystem-wide conditions, and even tipping points and thresholds, core information that then is being used through a variety of advice pathways, using this information to provide climate-informed advice through many of the on-ramps that we're using right now. Things like fishery stock assessments, risk assessments, ecosystem assessments, scenario planning, and other kinds of strategies. And you can see that that's all driven by or connected to the various applications in our regions, from rapid responses, protected species consultations, fishery strategies, recovery plans, and community adaptation strategies. So keep that in mind as we walk forward. So I'm going to unpack each of the components now. The regional ocean modeling component is the anchor for the entire system. This is made possible because of the really exciting developments and progress in the global modeling of climate and ocean systems. This is a game changer, and this is what really allows us to move forward on CEFI now. What this will do, building off of the MOM6 climate ocean modeling effort here in the United States, this is going to produce on a regular basis a series of products that then feeds everything else. And those products are listed there. One, these are going to be high resolution ocean outlooks like we've never had before. This is an order of magnitude finer resolution than what we're using now. We're on the 10 square kilometer range. And then the operational products are these four things. Hindcasts, 30-year hindcasts, updated every year. And of course, those are really critical to then developing and validating your forecasts, your outlooks. And there'll be three kinds of outlooks: seasonal outlooks out to 12 months, updated every 4 times a year; decadal outlooks out to 10 years, updated once per year; multi-decadal projections, updated every 5 to 6 years. And I want to be clear, the decadal outlooks out to 10 years are all of those: 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. So imagine having high resolution outlooks on ocean conditions on that kind of time scale. It really is a game changer and the foundation of the CEFI system. Next slide, please. This is just an at-a-glance product delivery Gantt chart kind of for those different products. You can see the years on the left, our regions across the top. The different colors represent different products. And you can see it cascades down to the greens, mean all of the products are reliably or operationally delivered in each region. The check marks show where we are at the moment. The effort to deliver these products is going quickly. It's really exciting. And I just wanted to impress upon you that how quickly these products are being developed. Next slide, please. You may have to skip this one. It's got it had a little video showing, but let me just say before we go to that one, so what's in these forecasts? This was a slide that I did for some of the ocean acidification folks. They were asking, well, what will these projections provide, right? I think there's something on the order of 200 different variables that will be available in these outlooks. And this was one where I think I pulled out some things really important to the ocean acidification folks, things like oxygen and temperature, pH, aragonite saturation. But this is the kind of thing that this is playing out, I forget over what time frames. I think this is a hindcast. But my point here is to emphasize the incredible richness of the information that will be available through these products. Next slide, please. Okay, the next component of the system is the data portal. This too is a really exciting piece of the system that will provide access to all of these different kinds of outlooks both to scientific community and to others, that it will be both a place where the kind of expert users can go download the data itself and then customize it in each region if they need to. It can also be a place where not so much experts can go and get information too. And just at a glance here, things like all those ocean forecasts, hindcasts, and projections, marine heat wave forecasts, and all kinds of other things. And it'll have visualization tools, tutorials as well. It's currently being tested as the products are available by our decision support teams. Next slide, please. So what are these teams and who's going to do all this work in the next phase? So there are really two regional groups of people that I want to highlight. One are these regional ocean modeling teams. They're the ones with that little help desk blue box. And these teams are one or two people in each region whose job it is to really be running many of those outlooks that I just talked about, and also be available to customize those products for particular applications within each region. This was one of the major barriers that we were facing. Although we had some information about ocean outlooks, you had to know who would run that model, when the last model was run. So having dedicated teams of people that can customize, you can go to and customize the products, particularly those ocean outlook products, was really an essential piece of building this system. The second group are the ones with the dark colored groups of three. These are the regional decision support teams, which are designed to take those ocean outlooks and begin producing that additional set of products and services, ecologically based services like future species distributions, implications for abundance, and that kind of thing. Exciting to report that we've been able to populate both of these teams over the past year, 45 new positions, and the regional decision support teams are 5 people that we have a core group that we've dropped into each of our fisheries science center, all 6 of our science centers, plus the Great Lakes, to be that critical gear or critical team within the center that can then enable all of the center's products and services to be more climate informed or better informed by changing oceans. Next slide, please. And just to give you a flavor of who are these decision support teams, they're intended to be, and they really have to be, interdisciplinary. So what you see here is, on the left side, the kind of position expertise, and then across the top are our fishery science centers across the US. And you can see that with the resources we had, we were able to populate teams across the spectrum of expertise from the ocean physical trophic, lower trophic modeler, which really works hand in hand with those regional ocean modelers to help customize and carry into the fisheries and other space those ocean projections. And then the ecosystem modelers, spatial modelers, socioeconomic modelers, and other folks that can help take that information and have it cascade through into the various derived products that really form the basis of the advice going to the decision makers. Next slide, please. So what I've said to you so far is we're trying to build a national system. It's got multiple components. And the good news is that we've stood up many of those components and they're producing product. The key product from the decision support systems are demonstration projects over the next couple of years. We refer to them as demonstration projects because they were designed to demonstrate the kinds of products and services that the CEFI system could provide to a variety of decision makers to support climate-informed decision making. And we had a number of key criteria. First criteria is useful, address decision maker needs, and do it through co-development process. That is, meet with them, understand their core needs, understand what product might meet that co-development from the beginning all the way through the end. The second criteria was that it's achievable over the next 1 to 3 years. And that really requires that middle bullet that we build on existing efforts and accelerate the progress building on the existing efforts, including CEFI pilot projects and existing work. The good news is that over the past year, the teams have developed, honed those projects to meet those two criteria, useful and doable. And we now have a final suite of projects in each region. It's about 70 demonstration projects across the 7 regions. And we're, as I said, these are intended to be very much collaboration, also a collaboration with existing programs and decision makers. Next slide, please. So I know this one's really hard to read, but I wanted to just highlight a couple of things. These are a few of the 70 projects to give you a flavor about the kinds of projects and products that these decision support teams are going to be able to demonstrate over the next couple of years. Again, these are the product of the co-development conversations with decision makers. These represent key issues or needs that the customers said were critical. And they also represent the things that we thought, the decision support teams thought they could actually do and get done over the next couple of years with the resources that we have at the moment. And much of that also was determined by what was already underway that we could build on or accelerate. So let me give you a flavor of some of those. And you can see where I've nested these into those 3 basic questions that we very much was consistently those 3 questions from the decision makers. What's coming, what's at risk, and how to respond. So for example, what's coming, some of the products will be early warnings of marine heat waves and other kind of extreme events. Obviously, the target decision makers are all kinds of resource users and actually the sectors involved. And the decisions, again, can be broad about perhaps adjusting seasons, quotas, and boundaries. Second, one of the primary other needs or requests from the customers across the board was having some projections of likely future distributions of fish stocks, marine mammals, and other resources to be able to inform fishery management decisions. And the other thing was part of that looking forward was having forward-looking ecological information. Ecosystem status reports are a product that in the United States that we're doing in each region. That is, it's looking at a suite of indicators to track the key status of key indicators of the ecosystem health and productivity. Right now, they use past information, right? What CEFI will do is allow some of those, many of them, to be then now forward-looking and provide an outlook. On what's at risk comes some really exciting work with different fishing communities from Alaska to the Southeast, helping them think through what's at risk and helping them position them to think about how they might want to respond. And then how to respond, this is almost the culmination of this sequence, evaluating how fishery management strategies may perform under these future conditions. Ideally, what would we would be able to provide our fishery management councils or other decision makers is information on how different strategies, fishery management strategies that they're considering might perform under those future conditions, so that they can, I think, in a better, more robust way, have the information to make those very difficult decisions that they're going to have to make. I think I may have lost someone down the bottom, but yes, integrating the climate-related or environmental changing information into stock assessments, a critical piece in informing the fishery management process, and then information about near-term forecasts and system alerts to be able to reduce, say, entanglement, fisheries and protected species entanglement when there are major ocean changes that change things like migratory pathways or migratory timing of, say, whales, and puts them at risk on in fishery areas. Next slide, please. Okay, so I've talked a little bit about the system, the 5 components of the system, and I want to make 2 points. One, we use the word system intentionally because to have this work, to have this work effectively, it requires all the pieces of the system to be doing their role and be integrated and feeding back and forth. So emphasizing that the foundation of this really begins in that regional ocean modeling component, giving those regularly delivered, robust outlooks of what that future ocean we think is going to be and early warnings, have that information all available through the portal, and then having these dedicated teams within our science enterprise in each region to be able to begin turning that into the kinds of products and advice, climate-informed products and advice, to help decision makers better deal with the tough decisions that they have to make in these with changing oceans. Next slide, please. So a quick reminder of what CEFI will do: establish a nationwide system for operational delivery of these climate products and services, support that climate-informed decision-making for marine resources and resource-dependent communities, things like early warnings, high-resolution ocean outlooks, risk assessments, scenario planning, and ultimately, perhaps the most important product is helping them evaluate the best strategies for resilience and adaptation with changing oceans. Next slide, please. So good news, I'm happy to report that build out of the CEFI system is underway. We received $40 million from the Inflation Reduction Act that came to NOAA. They were divided up based on roles and responsibilities across the 3 line office partners within NOAA, the $16 million to OAR to build out that regional ocean modeling component, $20 million to the Fisheries Service to build out particularly the decision support team and those demonstration projects, and NOS $4 million to also be part of the decision support team and demonstration project effort. Very happy that based on the hard work of a whole lot of people, that the regional ocean modeling products are being produced and on schedule, and they are being also tested and validated, and the validation is awesome. I mean, they are proving to be incredibly robust. The regional ocean modeling teams, these are the help desk people, are on board, and they're a key part of that testing and evaluation, and ultimately the customization of that information for the decision makers. The decision support teams are also on board, established in all regions, and they've begun developing those demonstration projects, building on existing efforts, including pilots in 4 regions, active engagement with those decision makers so that there's co-development of these projects and products all along the way. We have 70 or so demonstration projects underway, and all of this is possible because we're leveraging a whole lot of other funding and effort, and working closely with groups like fishery management councils and others who also receive some funding from IRA to advance climate-informed decision-making. And lastly, I'll say we're partners. Partners are the key to this, including our academic university partners and others. We couldn't do this without them. In fact, they are essential to its success. We continue to seek partners and information and ideas about applications as well. Next slide, please. So that's it. Hopefully this has been a useful overview about CEFI. I'm happy to take questions. And thank you again for the invitation to be here. Thanks.
Thanks so much, Roger. We have plenty of time for questions. If anyone has questions, you're welcome to come off mute, turn your camera on if you'd like, or raise your hand, or just put your question in the chat and we can read it out to Roger and get it answered. So it does look like I have a hand raised from Viv. Go ahead, Viv.
Hi, Roger. That was a fabulous presentation. Thank you for giving that overview. I am a modeler with Becky Project, and I've had some interactions with Kirsten Holzman, who's doing the CEFI and ACLIME, and we've had lots of chats about timelines for the Pacific side of the project. And I'm just curious if there are any updates on the timelines for when the sort of Pacific model will be available at all. And also, that's my first question. My second question is, and you might not be able to answer this, but, you know, how are your timelines sort of being affected at the moment with what's going on in the States?
Yeah, thank you. Good questions. Let me go to the first one. Grace, I think you can probably take down the slides if you want to stop sharing. That'd be great. So yeah, good questions. The first one, I'm so glad you're connected with Kirsten. She is so awesome and really a leader, both in the whole vision for this system and its building it out, particularly in the Alaska region. So a great source. I think we're ahead of schedule, and what I would do is I'll probably have to refer you to the actual modeling teams. My understanding is that we're ahead of schedule, and there are initial products for when you said Pacific or West Coast. Are you particularly talking about the California current, or are you thinking more Bering Sea and Alaska, that thing? But both of which are ahead of schedule, and both of which are in the and have this. Some of it's been provided, and so it's being kind of tested in QA to QC. So I think you could talk to Kirsten about a little bit more information on what's currently available, or we can put you in touch with some other folks. Do you know Mike Jaycox?
Yes, I do. Yeah, thanps. Yeah, I'll touch base with them. I haven't really wanted to reach out just given everything that's happening, but if you think that it's okay to sort of go ahead and get in touch with them again, then I will do so.
Yes, Mike will know exactly the status.
Okay, great.
Particularly of the California current system. To answer your second question, it is challenging times. So we are fortunate that the funding is still intact, and our staffing and effort is still intact. So we're crossing our fingers that remains the case. And of course, we're very much making the case that this is really essential to sustaining these powerful economic engines for the nation and for our coastal areas, right? There's $450 billion in economic activity, 2.3 million jobs, that this is really a small down payment in sustaining this kind of economic activity, safe seafood security, that kind of thing. So we're crossing our fingers. Thank you for asking.
Thanks so much. I think it's just such a wonderful project. I've been following it and I love it. And I agree. I think Kristen's amazing and you guys are amazing for doing this project. And so I'm very excited to see where it goes.
Thank you so much.
Thanks, Viv and Roger. Any other questions for Roger? Claire, go ahead.
Thanks, Roger, so much for this presentation, and really exciting to see some of those models in action. I loved that video. And just wondering, a lot of the models have some overlap with some of the international areas. And so like some of them seem like they might be useful for Canada, and wondering what kind of international engagement that CEFI has.
Yeah, thanks, Claire. Great question. So we have also seen that and thought for a long time that particularly our neighbors to the north, Canada, might be useful to them. So we've engaged DFO in Canada, and they are very interested. And we actually now have a pilot project, particularly in their northeast, their maritime, to have them take the ocean projections from the model footprint for their waters and begin testing and playing that out for them. So pleased to report that, yes, we're joined at the hip with DFO in a pilot sort of way, particularly for the East Coast or the Northwest Atlantic. We're hoping to do something similar on the Northeast Pacific. That makes my brain hurt. Our West Coast, right? And maybe even the Arctic system, because you're right, the footprints of those projections very much cover all of those spaces. That's the other place that we're trying to engage the international community is through the Supreme program that is designed intentionally to try and bring together international folks to talk about efforts to do this kind of thing, provide the kind of future outlooks on oceans for applications, particularly the fisheries. So what we're trying to do is through that is learn what others are doing, like the EU, Australia, Japan, and see how can we learn from what they're doing already. I think that's pretty much where we are. I'm just so happy about the connections with DFO. That was a recent development. Thanks.
Thanks, Roger. Go ahead, Cheryl.
Yeah, what a cool project, Roger. Wow. Like, and I guess like my big thought kind of about from the modeling side, right, is these models, the ocean models and the ocean biogeochemical models, were not developed explicitly for fisheries use. I would say the GFDL models more than any other modeling group. But I'm wondering if you have some thoughts, like I'm thinking that through this process, there's going to be a lot of, oh, like, you know, our model doesn't capture bottom temperature in this region where there's lots of groundfish, for example. Is there some kind of like vision of how you're going to feed back to the model development teams like at GFDL or these regional modelers in terms of, you know, really updating some of the physics or biogeochemistry in these models to make them more utilitarian for the applications, for the vision you have?
Yeah, right on, Cheryl. Thank you so much. I probably didn't say it or emphasize it or not, but you know, for each of those connections between the components, there is supposed to be a very active backwards arrow, a feedback loop to do exactly what you just said. This whole thing shuts down is if we don't have the feedback from the users to the decision support teams, and then from those decision support teams back to those ocean modelers on the MOM system. Right now, it's working really well. We've got teams of people as they try and play out and use the ocean models from GFDL, the projections, and they're beginning to use them. There's a lot of feedback back to the modeling system. So we also have engaged some partners. It also allows me to put a plug in for our partners in the Climate Program Office. They've committed one of their grant programs in the MAP program to be dedicated to helping be part of that evaluation and feedback loop. So absolutely, yes, the whole system, I'd say that's a signature piece that we hope the system has, is that constant feedback.
Can I ask one more? I'm so glad to hear that. Can I ask one more follow-up question? Grace, is that okay? Yeah. So I think like the other thing I've noticed, you know, kind of boundary spanning between fisheries and climate modeling is a lot of times like the subcultures, the language, like how people communicate. Like if you get fisheries managers and ocean modelers in the same room, how do you build that ability to communicate effectively and to do the co-development process? I'm wondering what lessons you've seen so far and like kind of how you're approaching that problem, because I think it's so like interesting to me how do we do that effectively and systematically?
I know that I can always count on you for some of the best questions, Cheryl. Thank you. That's a great one as well. Yes, that is challenging. It's almost as if we live in very different worlds. That is often the fishery management community, the science community there. So we're trying to, as I said, that part of the other signature piece of CEFI is serious co-development to make sure that the products are meeting real needs of the decision makers, and that we're not just, it's not a guesswork, right? It's co-development means you're working with them, hearing from them. It's a two-way street. So I think partly I'd say wrestling with that. It is a bringing these cultures together has its challenges. We have to learn to speak the more similar language and put things in ways that we both understand what we're saying. It's been very, I think so far it's been very productive. When I look at the kinds of things happening between, I'll point out, the Alaska example in the Bering Sea, the ACLIMB team, or that was the pilot precursor to the CEFI, as they began walking down this path of saying what kinds of products we think we can provide outlooks for fishery managers, they began that conversation with the fishery managers, right? And it took several years, I think I can say, that to get on the same page in the conversation. But it paid off that then the Fishery Management Council and others felt a part of it and began saying, yeah, we could use some additional information, and we see how this could come into our process. And I think that's probably the major challenge is, what are those on-ramps for this information? How does it flow into a management process that has this wheel, and they're trying to turn around stock assessments and impossible schedules, right? And the whole thing driven by that. How can we, step back, because that's what's going to have to happen in fishery this science and management of fisheries, and say, all right, the whole situation has changed, right? We can't assume stationarity. In fact, we got to assume change and got to prepare for that. And so what does that mean for the management carousel cycle? And then where can the science, what products and services, how can that come in? So all of that is to say, absolutely challenging. Got to figure out common language. But so far, we've found great receptivity. And I just need to acknowledge much of that is driven by a sense of urgency among decision makers because of the changes that are already clearly being seen by particularly the fishers in their regions. Yeah, good question, Cheryl. Thank you.
Yeah, it sounds like building that community was really important for the ACLIME and trust.
Indeed.
Thanks, Cheryl and Roger. Laura, go ahead.
Thanks, and Roger, thanks so much for your presentation. I wanted to follow up on Cheryl's question a bit to think about sort of beyond fisheries applications, sort of what some of the uses might be. And I'm curious if you could talk a bit about where you see these ocean modeling outputs sort of plugging into things beyond fisheries, but perhaps some other areas as well.
Yeah, thanks, Laura. Great question. Thank you. We kind of talk a lot about fisheries in these presentations, but I hint at other users, at least within our mission, right, for resource management and stewardship. So I guess our other primary clients here, our customers, are protected resources conservation folks. They're the ones actually working on the longer end, both the near and the full longer end of the time spectrum, right? Recovering a species is usually more on a 50 to 100-year time frame. So I would flag them. The protected species conservation as a core other customer. The other groups are things like wind energy, and I'm gonna really blow this up now and step outside of the resource management purview and just talk about ocean uses in general. If you think about large scale ocean use, putting in things that have anything like wind energy, right? Have decades of timelines, right? 50-year lifetimes or something like that. It would, we did talk to BOEM and others about this, and they were very excited about it because it turned out that BOEM too, in thinking about putting platforms out there, also was in great need of outlooks, ocean conditions out into the future. So I'd flag that one. I'm not sure about transportation, I'm not quite sure, but it seems to me that having kind of state-of-the-art regular operational production of these ocean forecasts to longer term projections could be useful to almost any sector that's trying to do things out in the ocean on any longer scale. So I'd say national marine sanctuaries. I didn't mention the protected areas as well. Both, how would you manage a national marine sanctuary that already exists now, but its environment's going to be changing, to thinking about where should the future sanctuaries be, given that things are changing. So anyway, I'll stop there. Thanks, Laura.
Thank you.
Thanks, Laura and Roger. Catherine, you're up next.
Thank you. Apologies, I have the sun right in my face. That was a really great presentation, Roger. Thank you so much. Just shifting back to the fisheries lens, I was just wondering, obviously this is a national initiative for now, but the United States is involved in regional fisheries management organizations across the Pacific and Atlantic. So I was just wondering if there are any long-term plans or potential to eventually branch out and also to provide additional support for these organizations as they are moving towards considering climate change impacts in their assessments and conservation strategies.
Yes, That was great. That was well said. So I think, were you referring to RFMOs, for example, in your first part? Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So we're very eager. I mean, very eager to help share the kind of products and services that CEFI will develop to RFMOs. We've made some connections there, and we're keen to follow up. And so, yes, I think our whole mission is, if this can be useful to others, let's figure out how we can do that. We're also really interested in learning from others, right? But to your point, yes, we're really keen to particularly work with RFMOs and see what we can do to provide information for them. My understanding is they don't have the kind of perhaps outlooks that they need to be doing this kind of planning and forecasting. And so it seems like, and I think our international folks that work with many of them they've tried to connect us several times. I understand that's a process itself of change and thinking about how to maybe do their work. So, and yes, through Supreme, we've often thought that would be a unique target as well.
Yeah, definitely. And it's something that we do as well, like through Becky within the Pacific region, is we're building a knowledge network to help connect different organizations and bring different types of knowledge together. And we engage with the RFMOs within the Northern Pacific quite regularly. So that's something we could connect on as well.
Well, that would be lovely. All assistance welcome. Thank you.
Perfect. We'll touch base. Thanks.
Thank you.
Thanks, Catherine. Any other questions for Roger? All right, I feel like I've waited the requisite awkward time. So if there are no more questions, we'll let Roger go. Thank you so much, Roger, for that great presentation. And thank you everyone for joining us for this webinar series. Our next webinar will be towards the end of March, so stay tuned for the official announcement. And I hope everyone enjoys the rest of their days or evenings. Thank you all.
Thank you.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
Take care.